guys, welcome to the Patriot News Network. I want to talk today about something very important, something that affects everybody in America, and that is the H-1B Genocide visa. Now, I know a lot of people aren't familiar with this. It has been a top censored story on many lists for over 20 years. So you might wonder, why is it such forbidden knowledge? And the reason is because it's a pile of crap. It's the government abusing its own citizens, and it's disgusting. I call it the genocide visa because it is taking our best and brightest engineers and throwing them by the millions into the streets. The H-1B visa is considered a non-immigrant visa. It's supposed to be a temporary program where we bring in, quote-unquote, the best and the brightest from other countries to work in technology and other specialized fields. I think even models can get them, or chefs. But it's supposed to be specialized knowledge that America does not have. Several times, Bill Gates and Zucker F. went to Congress and said they had a labor shortage and demanded a raise in the numbers for this visa. And several times the numbers have been increased, and now they have been rolled back slightly. There are two classes of people allowed in. One is for exempt institutions, which can be a university or other nonprofit, and the other type is non-exempt, which is a typical private sector job, and that is supposed to be limited to $65,000 plus $20,000 for master degree holders or better. The reality is that hundreds of thousands of these visas are granted every year, well exceeding the required limits. Several years, around the year 2000, they went way over the limits. And I'd like to just take a second and read the actual numbers granted. In 2016, 345,282 were granted. In 2015, 275,317 were granted. In 2014, 315,857 were granted. In 2013, 286,773 were granted. In 2012, 262,569 were granted. I hope that gives you a sense of it. I'm not going to continue. So one of the things about this visa is that the people being brought over are not the best and brightest. In fact, many are from India, where there are fake universities, fake diploma mills, and even 6-week certificate classes being called bachelor's degrees. And this visa is supposed to require a 4-year bachelor's. In other cases, a 2-year bachelor's degree is allowed, or even high school in some cases. In 600 cases, you can just have a high school diploma and that's enough. The USCIS and the GAO have done several studies into the fraud, and here is some examples of the fraud based on a detailed sampling that they went thoroughly into to see what people actually had. Of those who claimed they had a bachelor's degree, 43% of the sample were lying. Of those who claimed they had a graduate degree, 57% were lying. So basically, what this visa allows people to do is take our best and brightest engineers, throw them in the streets, lay them off, fire them, force them to train their replacement workers, and bring in Indians and Chinese and Bangladeshis and Pakistanis with fake degrees who work for half the price. And how many have come over on this visa? Roughly 8 million of them. And how many total technology jobs are there in America? Roughly 4 million. And roughly 40% go on to get a green card and stay permanently, even though it's called a non-immigrant visa. And actually, the visa has several specific legal parts of its definition so that if people are in the process of filing for a green card, they can stay longer. It's normally a 3-year visa with one renewal for 3 years. But if your green card is in process, you can stay another 3 years. Normally, if you lose your job, you have to go back within 60 days. But this, again, is often overlooked and not a big deal. One of the things that is horrific, if you look at the growth of technology jobs between, say, the year 1999 and 2017, the jobs have been roughly flat. It's roughly 4.1 million, some say 4.5, but it's basically, this is not a huge growth segment. And yet every year they bring in another 350,000 foreign workers. And that means every one of those workers is kicking an American worker to the curb. Every one of those workers is genocide for an American person's life. Whether they have to go on unemployment. I know cases where brilliant engineers went to installing kitchen countertops. In one of the saddest cases, Kevin Flanagan drove to his employer's parking lot where they had replaced him with a Bangladeshi worker and took out a gun and blew his brains out. And there have been a lot of deaths. This is a genocide visa. This is America kicking its best and brightest in the teeth and saying, F you. We don't give a shit. We don't give a shit about you. And it's funded by the bigwigs and the honchos of Silicon Valley. So when you've got Gates and Zucker petitioning to Congress directly and handing out millions of dollars in campaign contributions, they get what they want. And what they want is cheap, dumb labor. And the MBAs take their $1 million bonuses for saving the company, $10 million a year in IT expenses. And everybody claps their hands, how wonderful it is. But ultimately, these people are imbeciles. They can't do the work. There's always 1 or 2 Indians covering for 30 or 50 totally incompetent ones. And worse, often they'll bring in 1 or 2 Americans and make them shoulder the burden of a job that normally takes 50 people until they get burned out and exhausted. Americans are also treated terribly by these workers. They're often heckled, told they're no good. And a lot of these low IQ Indians have terribly inflated self-opinions of their abilities. I've personally worked with IBM on several large $100 million contracts where there were many Indians involved, and they were there to bring in the dollars. They were not there to do work. IBM paid them, let's say, for example, $15 an hour, and billed them out at $80 an hour to the client. And by having 20 of these on the contract, they made a lot of money. Also, the morality of these people is horrific. They do not have Western morality. Their morality is whatever it takes. The ends justify the means. When I lost one of my positions as lead architect with an IBM project, one of the Indians that I had helped the most ran to the office and talked with my boss. I thought he was in there pleading that I should not be let go. No, He was asking for my job. This is the kind of disgusting crap that Americans now find in the industry that they built, that they invented, that they discovered. And it's all been taken away. Eventually, companies will fall apart, lose innovation, have terrible bugs. Often they'll lose really sensitive American information and data and have huge breaches of confidential information, such as credit card numbers, health histories, social security numbers, and other things which enable identity fraud. If you remember the horrific Obamacare website design, the one where they decided to load the translation of the page in 56 different languages all at once on every page load, and the site ran so slowly it was impossible for people to use. That was done by Indians through Cognizant. You have no idea what it feels like to be bright, to be hardworking, to put yourself through the top schools and universities, to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars for 4 or 6 years. Usually these programs are at least 5 to get through. They're very difficult. All the while you think you're going to be rewarded because you're very good at what you do. And the reality is you get a piece of shit, you get kicked in the teeth, you get thrown to the curb. And even if you haven't been directly assaulted by this horrific H-1B genocide, it's depressed wages, it's made getting work much harder, and many whole companies, especially even in government, have been completely taken over by hordes of these. They call that a curry den. And once a place is a curry den, Americans don't want to work there anymore. Who would want to? It's hell. So Americans take the soft jobs and become product managers and analysts, and they don't go into tech anymore, or they become lawyers. And I just want to say, what will happen the next time we have war and we need brilliant cryptographers and we need brilliant technologists? What will happen when all Americans go, F you, we're not going into these fields anymore. We don't care that it has a decent salary. You've been screwing us over for 25 years and you don't give a shit. This is one of the most depressing parts of American history. It's an absolute abomination. It's disgusting that it's gone on so far. And where the hell is Donald Trump? The only thing Donald Trump said was that, well, he'd like to prioritize these visas by salary so that Facebook and Google get the first pick because they tend to have higher salaries in Silicon Valley. And that would also give them an edge over the 20 or 30 Indian consulting companies like Tata, Infosys, Cognizant, etc., who put engineers in. They say they're working in Kentucky, and then they put them in a place like New York City so that their LCA or their wage certification comes in at $40 an hour or $30 an hour, and that's normal. And then they bill them out for $100 an hour, and they make lots of money. Another thing they do is they require the candidates in India to pay fees up front that they have to work off so they become indentured servants. Another thing they do is they have them in the U.S. on L1 visas or H-1B visas, working paid only expense money, which isn't taxable, and then they pay them directly in India tax-free. So it's a huge tax dodge for many, many people. There are a lot of reasons why this visa needs to be abolished. I think the biggest reason is because it's an absolute slap to the American ideal that if you're smart and you work hard, you'll do well. I think it's an abomination that we treat our engineers this badly. I think it's going to wreck the whole industry. I think it already has wrecked a lot of Silicon Valley. I think it's caused the bankruptcy of many huge companies. And a lot of these CEOs from India, not that it has to be just Indians, but really anyone who started with this H-1B visa, have destroyed companies because they lack the morality, even the horrible morality of Americans CEOs is nothing compared to the abuse and fraud. When Intel tried to do its Whitfield processor project in India, the teams expensed absolutely everything with fraudulent expensing to the degree that Intel just said no more. When Boeing's 787 Dreamliner project was going, it was held up because the software couldn't be completed by the Indians. There's just hundreds of cases where these teams do terrible work and nobody cares. And even if they don't do terrible work, the cost savings are a lie because you actually only have 1 or 2 workers who are mediocre and then another 20 who are billing out, who are pretty much absolutely useless, or worse. One of the workers I had went in and actually broke all the files the day of the big presentation, and I had to rush in and fix everything because they couldn't understand what things did because they were stupid. But that's okay. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Trump's not going to do anything. Sessions actually spoke out against the fraud and abuse and the horrors of the H-1B visa as a senator. He's done nothing. There's been a committee set up to look into it, and they've done nothing. And that's a lot of what Trump has done, is just launch committees. This abuse has gone on now for, I don't know, 30 years? I have to look it up. Hold on. It's gone on a very long time. And it got excruciatingly bad during the Y2K crisis as they just opened the floodgates and millions of these workers came in. Another big problem is the visa. I'm trying to find the year. Hold on. It doesn't say on Wikipedia. I believe it's actually been going since the 80s. But certainly in the mid-90s it picked up steam, and by 98, 99 Y2K, they were bringing in hundreds and hundreds of thousands a year. They pay a small fee, and that fee is supposed to go towards training of American technology workers. So when I lost one of my jobs, I tried to see if there was any funding so I could take an SAP class, which costs about $7,000. And there wasn't. There was no funding. What they did is they took all the money and used it to train nurses, Filipino nurses. They used it to do sheet metal workshops. And also, they used it to train ghetto blacks, intro to computing classes so that they'd know where the power button was on a computer. That's where all the training money went. None of it went to help American engineers. It's an absolute lie if you think it did. This genocide, if it's allowed to continue, could very well destroy the whole country. Because this attitude that you can throw our best citizens aside, and Americans are not first, Americans are last. Americans who worked hard, who struggled, who were smart, who did everything right, get kicked in the teeth and lose their jobs because the government doesn't give a shit. Well, that's gonna just wreck the nation, because everybody's gonna go, hey, if the government doesn't give a shit about this, then why should I give a shit about the nation? They don't care about me, I'm not gonna care about them. And we're gonna experience a brain drain like you've never seen. I think people are gonna start to leave the country. They're gonna start to not participate. You can see the labor participation rate is 92 million not in the workforce, and they call it a 4% unemployment. Bullshit. Shadowstats.com has it at 22%. It used to be 23%, and it's several times higher than the Great Depression ever was. The H-1B visa is a critical issue. I would say it should be utterly abolished. But if I had to write a bill that I thought had a chance of passing, I would say we have to limit the numbers to 10,000. There's already a genius visa, so if you're a verifiable genius, you already have a path in. Limit the number to 10,000. Set the minimum salary to $175,000 a year. Require a $25,000 fee be paid 4 out-of-work software engineers for them to use as they see fit for training classes. By bringing it back down to only $10,000 a year instead of the $350,000, there's a chance that gradually the visa will be used how it was intended to be, for helping American companies get very specialized talent that they are not able to source, rather than for American companies to get cheap, stupid labor who can barely do the jobs and throw their best and brightest in the streets because they think it's money saving. This visa is the most disgusting perversion of American values, and it needs to end. It has destroyed an entire industry, it has destroyed millions of high-paying jobs for Americans, and it has built up a cesspool of immoral people in this nation who are mostly liars, cheaters, and thieves, and I have no respect for them. They're also terribly misogynistic, and on the subject of women, thanks to Barack Obama's decision, they're all allowed to bring their wives in, and their wives all get to work as well. So when you see that 350,000 number, double it. 700,000 a year, because they bring in their wives. There have been studies. It has been found to be fraudulent. It has been found to be abused. We know it's a pile of crap. And the only thing that happens is nobody has the political will to fight for Americans. They're all a bunch of paid off weenies who take the Silicon Valley money and laugh and say, oh, there's a worker shortage. There's a worker shortage. We have to bring in dumb brown people. No, we fucking don't. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. This is genocide. People are dying. People's lives are being destroyed. This is a piece of shit. It never should have happened. You should have never fucked over American engineers. And now that you have for 25 years, if you ever need engineers, good luck to you, because I think a lot of us are getting sick of it. Why isn't Trump doing anything? I don't know. But he needs to get off his butt and start. There are 13 or 14 articles on the H-1B visa at patriotmouse.com. It's one of the top links in the top menus. Feel free to read them for much more detail about how the scams work, and also stories of how horrible these people are. And if you like this, please subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, and go to patriotmouse.com. Consider becoming a supporter, a Patreon supporter. I hope you appreciate this video. Thank you.